Hello, thank you guys for joining us today. ASAP Executive Spotlight, as you guys know, we interview executives with some of the customers and clients that we might have worked with, people we've gotten to know well. And a lot of times we interview CIOs, CISOs, CTOs, and tech entrepreneurs. Today with us is Mr. John Graham, who originally joined NetJets as the Chief Information Security Officer, and I think recently was promoted into more of a dual CIO and CISO role for NetJets. So really excited to have you today with us, John.
Thank you, Jeremy. Yes, it's been about, 6 or 8 weeks here in the CIO role as well. Yeah.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, combined role. And that's something, obviously that we could talk about a little bit today. A lot of times people that might tune into our podcast, oftentimes they are CIOs or CISOs, or they could be a deputy CISO or CISO that is thinking, how could my career evolve, and the different twists and turns. And, CIO is a little bit of a different beast. And then sometimes some companies have that role, kind of a combined role, like where you're at today. If you can, let's just tell the audience a little bit today about, who is NetJets? A lot of times people might know at a high level, okay, NetJets sounds like jets, okay. But tell us a little bit about the business model, who owns NetJets, how you guys fit into the marketplace.
Absolutely. So we are a private company. We are a private airline as well, and we sell shares of an aircraft. So we can sell an entire aircraft as a service, or we sell shares of aircrafts. The interesting thing is none of our flights are pre-scheduled. Everything is on request from our owners or customers. And some of those can be, the top tier can be as little as 4 hours, and we'll pick them up anywhere in the world. We have now gotten our fleet up to almost 800 aircrafts globally. So even though we may not be a household name, we're actually a pretty big airline, believe it or not, in the world of private aviation anyway.
Absolutely. Yeah. When I first kind of started working with NetJets, I really did some research, and I said, okay, fractional jet ownership, what's that mean? And really NetJets was a pioneer, I think, in the United States and in the world for the concept of fractional jet ownership. In other words, someone doesn't have to be a multi-billionaire and own the entire jet to be able to maybe get involved in private aviation, right? Share with us just a little bit. So I think at one point, Warren Buffett was a customer, and he was flying around maybe on NetJets. And then at some point, Berkshire Hathaway acquired NetJets. Is that correct, John?
That is correct. In the 90s, Berkshire Hathaway did acquire NetJets, and we are, I guess, a subsidiary in the whole portfolio of Berkshire, which gives us a lot of interesting dimensions. One, being a CISO or now a CIO for that company means that I have access to all of my peers across the Berkshire companies as well. And we just actually had one of our annual meetings last week in Omaha, where we all got together as CISOs and CIOs, and there was roughly probably around 180, 200 people that participated. So it's really pretty interesting. Berkshire is very hands-off as opposed to some of the other companies like KKR or Blackstone. At the same time, they encourage us to meet with each other, share ideas, share thoughts, and we do a tremendous amount of that networking.
A lot of brain power in that room. I mean, I just off the top of my head, I know BNSF Railway, Lubrizol. There's just Pacific Corp, I think, at one point. There's just so many companies that are in that Berkshire Hathaway family, and so a lot of brain power in that room. And I bet that's awesome. Well, share with us a little bit about back onto the NetJets thing. I know that there used to be something called the Marquee Card Program, and then maybe it became the NetJets card. But right. I used to think, okay, you pretty much need to be a millionaire to fly on a NetJets flight. But tell us a little bit about that program and how maybe the services that NetJets offers is maybe more available to people than they might know.
Yeah, so that is sort of the entry level, if you will, into this space, and they call it a card because you basically buy a block of hours or flight hours on a card. I can tell you, it's sort of like joining a country club. You have a fee, an entry fee to start with, then you'll have a monthly maintenance fee, and then you'll actually have the flight time or the hours on the card, if you will. So I won't try to jump into all the cycles of how much it costs and everything else, but I can just say that's sort of the entry into the
Yeah.
space.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that stuff, that information obviously is available at netjets.com, and people can check that out if they're interested in, hey, what a cool gift that would be for a 10-year anniversary, buy your husband or wife a 24-hour NetJets card. What
There
that'd
you
be
go.
super cool.
That'd be
But
fantastic.
So let's shift a little bit into IT. My audience usually is IT executives, and obviously you're super strong in cybersecurity and have evolved into that CIO role. If you can share with us just a little bit about what the IT journey might be looking like at NetJets, anything that you can share, obviously.
Yeah,
What does digital transformation maybe look like over the next few years with you guys there at NetJets?
absolutely. I mean, and it's been good. My career kind of does span both IT and cyber, although I got really focused in cyber in the late 1990s and have really made a profession out of it. When the opportunity came up and they talked to me about moving into the CIO role, a lot of the same challenges that I sort of inherited around the cyber function when I joined NetJets exist in the other space, in the IT space, which is the teams weren't actually mature in processes. They have not been mature in velocity. How can we actually move forward quickly with the things that are and required to be custom for us as a company? And so a lot of the focus that we have, we've done the journey of okay, let's migrate to the cloud. We're still in a little bit of a hybrid state, but mostly in the cloud from the majority perspective. And we're now working much more on the nimbleness of the whole function. So, how do we get the ITSM maturity level up, especially around our infrastructure teams and the repetitive processes that they have? And then how do we get to a much more nimble state using agile methodology with the business in hand to truly add value, at the business stack? A lot of the things that we do as a company are logistics based. Like I mentioned earlier, we may have a customer at the top tier call us, and in 4 hours we have to pick them up, which means, we have to know logistically where is an aircraft that can pick them up and crew and so forth. And so a lot of the things that are sort of our secret sauce are the rules and the logistical tooling that we have created ourselves that manage all of that scheduling. And so having the teams oriented towards keeping those platforms that are internally written up to date and making sure that they're not just falling behind in terms of the base under them is also a lot of our focus right now. Is how do we get those things, current, and then how do we keep that velocity moving as the company continues to grow?
Yeah, outstanding. I think that's exciting. So your customer is also, in some regards, the owner of some of the assets of the business, which is the aircraft, right?
Right.
But they're also the customer, right? And
Yeah.
obviously, data privacy is such a huge issue to a lot of companies, and NetJets would be, no different in protecting the data privacy of some of the caliber of people that are in your customer base. Obviously, could be super important. Bad actors that could want to know whether it be their financial information or even just to some extent knowing where someone is and when they're going to be there. There's all kinds of things that could be at play there with NetJet's customer base. Share with me a little bit about your thoughts and your posture on data privacy.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a huge thing for our customer base, and it's interesting. Unlike if you own your own aircraft, which means you're registered to what they call a tail number or the identification number on the tail of the aircraft. If you own your own, you're registered to that aircraft and that tail number, which is actually publicly available in tools like FlightAware. So believe it or not, one ancillary for joining our organization or as a customer is you will not necessarily fly on an aircraft that has your tail number on it. You'll be flying on aircraft in our fleet. And at times then, like if you own a share of a 6-seater aircraft, but you need a 16-seater aircraft, you can actually request that and we can upgrade you and so forth. But the privacy side is pretty unique because we'll fly you on a private jet, but it's not necessarily tagged to you, so the public can't know, hey, you're moving in these areas. And then the other pieces of it are the private information or the personally identifiable information, all the information that we have on our customer base as well to orient an aircraft for their flight. Like they may have certain choices of bourbon that they want, or certain types of wine on the aircraft, or certain magazines, and we'll orient it towards them. All of that information we consider super private for these individuals, and we protect it with all of the normal cutting edge or leading edge cyber you would imagine, like data loss prevention and segmentation and all of the things that you could imagine.
Yeah, and people that are listening to the podcast right now, you might be aware, or something comes to mind in the last couple of months where you say, oh yeah, there was a certain famous person and they were flying around on their private jet, and all of a sudden social media knew about it, and it is exactly what you were talking about, how they were tracking that tail number, and cyber sleuths would go in and they would kind of almost like harass or be aware of when and where people were and where they were flying. And it's almost like cyber stalking, if you will. And, depending on who we're talking about, that could be a huge issue. And NetJets really protects that. So I think that's interesting to note.
You got it.
I think, and you were alluding to this already in what we've talked about. I think the more I got to know NetJets, it kind of evolved from, is it an aviation business, to it's almost a luxury brand also, right? Because the way they think of the customer and customer experience is a huge deal. IT and customer experience can go hand in hand to some extent. Anything exciting on the horizon that you guys might be doing from a technology standpoint that kind of has an impact on customer experience?
Absolutely. We are, so we have basically 2 development stacks in our IT function. One looks at all the logistics of the aircraft maintenance. How do we move and relocate crew for the aircraft and the flight scheduling? And then we have another function that looks at the entire life cycle of our owner and our customer base, right? So from the time they're prospect and marketing, all the way through the sales cycle, all the way through, okay, you're on board, and how do we actually interface with you and handle all of your requests and your concerns. And so we are looking at how do we really increase that hand holding and that flow from a digital perspective. We do have a mobile app today. We do have web portals, and we do have ways we interact with our customer base. And we're just trying to figure out, how do we actually reinvent a lot of that? How do we bring it up to a completely different level? And we are also focusing on things like the identity management stack around our customer base, and how do we manage that if you're flying as an owner or if you're flying as a passenger and so forth, right? What does that experience look like, and how do we reduce the overhead or the administrative side on your side, the customer side? So we're doing a lot around reinventing that space over the next year or two.
That's super exciting. I think when you think about customer experience and you think about aviation and you think about how quickly our tech stack is changing and how AI and ChatGPT and drone technology, you think about all this stuff, and no matter what business model you're in, you kind of say, how could it impact us? How could that be disruptive to us? How do we get in front of that? And how does it maybe change where we're going to be, by 2030, by 2035? On the subject of, just thinking of AI and maybe drone technology advancements, anything there where, you guys are making some adjustments or thinking ahead for the future there at NetJets?
So the AI piece has been interesting. AI has been around a long time. It's not brand new. It sort of hit the world stage with ChatGPT and some of the newer generative AI pieces, right, in the past several months. We have taken a posture of unlike some companies where they've tried to block it and so forth, we've actually taken a different posture of meeting as a group around legal and HR and IT, and talking about, how do we raise awareness for our employee base, but not restrict the learning that they're going to get out of just being curious. So we've already seen some really interesting dynamics there, and we are looking at how do we leverage that, those concepts as they continue to evolve, within our own stack. And then when you talk about other things like electronic vehicles or electric vehicles and drones and other space, I mean, we are involved in it. It's not something that's immediate on our list of to-dos, but it's certainly something we're involved with, because there may be different areas within the world where smaller aircraft that are electric come into play, and we feel like we're positioned well to support those if we need to.
Yeah, that's true. I think, we're starting to hear a little bit about drone taxi services. That would be more if you're trying to get 1 hour across Los Angeles or Chicago or Houston or Dallas, a big city maybe. I don't think that's the same as hopping on a jet and flying 4 to 8 hours
Right.
or from one continent to another and all of that. So that's exciting. So, John, sometimes people that might join my podcast, they could be directors of enterprise apps, directors of BI and analytics. They could be really strong in SAP or enterprise apps, but even directors and VPs of infrastructure. We have just a lot of IT leadership in general that sometimes will tune in. Anything that you would say just about NetJets as an employer, being in Columbus, Ohio? What a great organization to work with. When I tell people about the different companies I visited in person, NetJets is one of the coolest. Some companies have the cool factor, the it factor,
Right.
And when you go to NetJets headquarters, it's like there is a cool factor there. But anything you would just share about how you guys are growing your company culture, some of the kinds of people that you guys might be looking to bring on in the Columbus area?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we are, all joking aside, it is a cool company. I mean, it really just is. And our buildings and facilities are at the airport. So you can look out the window and actually see the aircraft going into and out of the hangar. And I mean, there's a lot of activity that you're really a part of, regardless of what your job is. And that's one of the mantras of the leadership team is, you got to know the business and you've got to really understand it. You keyed it earlier too about we're a luxury brand, and service is really the core. Service and safety, or safety and service, are the core of our whole company. And if you think about that and you're oriented toward that as an individual and your style and how you like to do things, it's the sky's the limit. I mean, it's just a lot of fun from the perspective of you'll get the opportunity to make a lot of change in the company, unlike some of the larger companies that are, ingrained in process and things like that. We are still growing and on a growth trajectory that allows for us to change and allows for us to actually have some real cool creativity. Curiosity is also one of the mantras that's sort of in our culture, and it really lends itself to, hey, ask a question or dig into something, ask why this is going the way it's going, or ask how it could be done differently. And it's really, really respected and sought after, within the culture, which for an IT individual is phenomenal as far as I'm concerned, because then, again, the sky's the limit. You can innovate, you can do a lot of different things. In the cyber stack, we brought in a lot of the leading edge technology, and then we even went as far as working with several startups where we helped them evolve their product right out of the gate. So the teams have gotten to do a lot of that. We see the same thing in IT, and we see that we're headed in the same direction.
Yeah, it's private aviation, it's luxury brand, but it is very much a technology-driven business, and that was very apparent for me. When I got to go and just kind of walk around and get to know how NetJets was working. Very, very technology-driven business. Fun place to grow your career. If you're especially if you're in Columbus, Ohio, you guys should be looking at NetJets and being aware that could be a great employer to go and work with. So, John, as we wrap up, one kind of fun question, maybe it could be, I don't know, but Have you met Warren Buffett? Do you have any fun stories? And, I know I read his investment letter every year, which is public. Anybody out there wants to read Warren Buffett's, annual, newsletter. It's really just a fun, it's a very informative read. But any fun stories yet? Have you gotten to meet the man? And, what do you got on that front?
Great question. So actually, I did get to meet him last week, which was fantastic. Awesome. It was a very big surprise. And there wasn't anything that I'll leave you with that was really striking that's not out in the public. But it was just fantastic to be able to meet him. I spent a lot of time early in my career at Hewlett Packard when Bill Hewitt and Dave Packard would walk in the cafe and just talk to people. And he's so much still like that, fantastic. And so is our executive team here at NetJets. So it was a great opportunity. And that was an opportunity by the CIO and CISO summit, when we were in Omaha last week. So again, just a fantastic opportunity that the company provides.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you. No interview with a Berkshire Hathaway executive would be complete without at least asking the question. So, hey, John, it's been a pleasure getting to know you today on the video podcast, getting to know more about NetJets, and hopefully for some of the people watching and hearing this, they'll look more into who and what NetJets is all about with the NetJets card program, and just kind of, they'll oftentimes see you guys in branding and, strong PGA partnership as well. And, I think you guys are doing some great things, and it's going to be fun just to continue to watch what you guys are doing over the next couple of years there at NetJets.
Awesome. No, I really appreciate it, Jeremy. And I appreciate all your help as well along the way.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, John. And you guys, everybody, feel free to chime in on comments below. Keep the dialogue going and stay tuned for some upcoming ASAP video podcasts. Thank you.